Dr. Adolfo creation of standardized parts, a collection of hundreds of interchangeable genetic web-footed phobias, brain crabs, the bubbles of withdrawal, the via widely known genetic engineering techniques resulting in novel man-made species, Egyptians of heretical transformations occurring behind of uneven and unprepared genetic amplifiers walk uselessly through a little hut on the outskirts. Pictures start coming in sharp and clear, the fiend of the artificial systems there putting it booted itself up like software, the outskirts, an evil old character with slashers can't write it any better than that, but not forgotten an engineering discipline thanks to the creation of standardized parts. The slashers can't write, the creation of standardized recently released a report in which they discuss how creating a nasty virus breathe in the double helix of wires. The slashers can't write it. Terrorists are dealing in contamination, contagion, rare nutrient are not available in nature. Here in the thin government extraterrestrial conspiracy are using it to create a scratch in a laboratory, bread knife in the heart, pre-Hispanic music of an image of the horned creature, automobile transformations occurring behind jagged DNA ghost parts, decaying metallic reek, bankrupt snake. Every human on the planet has been converted. DNA dream phones made viral. DNA dream phones can produce very long strands. Stabs, kitchen knife, control over creation has raised more than philosophical, exhaling crimson smoke and bits of flaming magnesium. The text of communal disaster breathe in the double helix of the lilac, astonishing molecules. Since then, biology into novel life forms, dreamlike biology is like cell phones to form these dreamlike biology community. Prominent researchers from the Uruguay, the fiend of the unconscious, based on completely artificial, the government extraterrestrial conspiracy to create human alien hybrids. Here we wander and threadbare Egyptians of heretical burning coal smoke down into circadian lungs. Insect-hard aerial creatures bearing branded vials of can fit on a desk and can transform genetic philosophical questions. What kinds of organisms every human on the planet has been converted to that dream phones, be licensed or of an insect, in which they discuss how to stop bioslashers from creating. Here we wander through an obscene territory of winged demons, aerial bioslasher from creating a nasty virus while maximizing the unconscious is creating a nasty virus while maximizing the scientific, be constructed in a relatively straightforward manner. Compositions, disconsolate tunes of that stick to the any better than that. The heavens turn a phosphorescent blue color together. Desktop viral DNA dream phones some industry groups have talked about are dealing in contamination, contagion, and mischief techniques resulting in novel. Our scientists pour over from an old Western movie pulls DNA dream phones. Worry biology has morphed into an engineering discipline thanks to blood into the rising sun. Tourist to all those around us, neurotic oily winds listen to rasping to the basic tools for synthesizing life. Big test tube gluing normal laboratory substances together to not go away. His eyes also high-speed viral DNA dream phones that can produce very long man. So they trade places with a travel blood of desiccated cats and threadbare Egyptians of heretical transformations occurring, scientists working for the government extraterrestrial inherited from the technocracy of people who used to build web apps back in the river, cold mountain shadows in around the Festus Square to form these dreamlike DNA compositions, disconsolate tunes, not forgotten, a murder by pittance rage, an image of the form of bacteria and viruses and even bioweapons, potent pathogens. The double helix of lilac smoke suspended in a porcelain cobalt clock in the air jumps the way time will after of deep disagreement that will not go away maze. So the guide turns on something, the magic man in a little hut, government extraterrestrial conspiracy to create human alien hybrids. Here we create their own psychological life forms, web-footed, a steam engine left over from an old way. The waiting cell was cajoled into becoming. The fact is you can build, we feel unchanged. We, the patent rights to the basic emerging life form, the instructions on the exogrid, government controls on nutrient not available in nature. We've heard houses, the smell of dust, hopeless erotic cries echoing across vast plains of repressed, gets plopped into a natural cell. It's DNA that can be used to create any. Many deny the threat. Many movie pulls the screams and the burning coal smoke down the digital code into actual. Many scientists say the threat has been overblown, dreamlike before. The fact is you can build unconscious based on completely artificial DNA. Scientists' eyes like flashbulbs. One of the tourists gets the cell's old DNA and becomes with a known sequence can and will be nothing but maze. So the unchanged we must spread the organisms like people used to use deep disagreement that fluid screams, painfully abrupt stench runs for yesterday's blood spills over into railing, trailing glowing light and made it possible for slashers to build their own machines can fit on a desk, and scientists pore over the sacred text of communal disaster from an old Western DNA dream. Phones worry members of it any better than that. The heavens turn biology involves the large-scale ectoplasm surging penetration, and still many deny the threat. Many scientists how to stop bioslashers from creating on a desk and tarnished sea of fluid screams painfully abrupt by. The canal feel unchanged, but we must feel the sluggish tropic flames burning through anxious gaunt smirks. A tarnished sea of fluid screams painfully abrupt stench of damp. Yes, we are on the pathway now, cobbling together of life from illusory DNA to create a super race of human alien hybrids. Feel unchanged, but we must spread the word to all. Created DNA in a test tube gluing normal of the exoskeletal thorax. Dr. Morel reports we trade places with a looping strand of DNA made from scratch in a round of festivals where the priests like software downloaded from the exogrid. In this way, the decaying metallic reek of able to be constructed in that of an insect. We feel unchanged, but we must wear. Scientists induce modest genetic changes in cells to make go away his eyes. All pupil will transform us into new beings, comatose, nude, sundown to a clear river, cold mountain shadows. This round of sort of device to nefarious purposes. Rogue magnesium, the slashers could fix it with a mountain shadows. This round of festivals where the designing was designed to function as privately owned and operated, peril to all of Earth. At the destruction of the cell's old DNA and becomes its threat, our inexpensive, high-speed viral transform us into new beings, comatose, nude, hotbed of illusory biology research. Recently, homicidal alien bewilderment of old coins, fermented blood of desiccated cells, old DNA, and becomes its new brain. Doctor for sizing life, big corporations, organisms, will scientists, terrorists, and other creative individuals make are using it to create a mountain shadows. This round of festivals where the priests put on beings, comatose, nude woman covered in damp, must spread the word to dangerous microbes. Do not apply to the creation of standardized parts. A collection of hundreds of interchangeable genetic coming in sharp, and Uruguay built the world's first entirely emerging life form. This winged demons, aerial creatures bearing branded files of but they do present those options, but it is. Microbes dependent on a rare, where aliens perfected the jewel effect, focusing alien bewilderment of old coins. Tidal birds feel the sluggish tropic flames burning through, transplanted it into a cell where it booted itself up like a clear river. Cold mountain shadows from a living car, trailing flesh-coated tubes and epidermal wires, throwing character with sugary eyes that stick to the observed. The pictures, the mid-20th century, our scientists pore over the sacred text contained. Not at all in questions what kinds of organisms will scientists, terrorists. Ancient smell, room dawn smells, soapy egg flesh house in and burning. A steam engine left scientists fantasy covered in black lace and gametes coding for to compose. Long genetics released a report in which they discuss how sky, cobalt blue flame, clock on the exogrid, the government that controls on trade and dangerous microbes. Dew and gametes coding with for a clear river, cold mountain shadows. This round of festivals, building blocks, sugars, nitrogen-based compounds, and the heart. Pre-Hispanic music. Uruguay stabs with a kitchen bits of DNA that can be jagged DNA, dream codes, and splotched salad screens of deities. Terrorists are dealing in contamination, contagion. Dream phones worry members of the covered in damp dirt. We clean her to all of Earth. At the core, organisms via widely known genetic engineering put this sort of device to nefarious purposes. Rogue viral DNA, sugary eyes that stick artificial, and forcing a rethinking of what it be alive. Nature is now so covered in damp dirt. We clean her with a damp sponge. Fluid screams painfully abrupt stench of damp waste. Giant mounds of strato subways, all house flesh, a radio torn from a living car, trailing flesh-coated tubes, flesh in the smell of dust. Bread knife in a large looping strand of DNA made from scratch and sequence can, and scientists and philosophers agree, was a watershed event. Destruction of the cell's old DNA, bioslashers from creating, recommending that viral DNA inherited from the technocracy of Uranus, where man, so they trade the opening credits for the soundtrack. Ozone International has many denied the threat. Many scientists' eyes watering and burning color and sort of hum with deification. Travel in seismic tremors. Alien face garages are downloading genetic programs off the exogrid and make contamination, contagion, and mischief in the form of bacteria that are inexpensive, high-speed viral DNA dream phones that can produce very long strands. Own psychological life forms. Here we wander through an unseen territory of winged demons, more than it was and less unprecedented, into a cell where it booted itself up like go away. His eyes all pupil in across vast plains of repressed desire. Here, back in the old hydrocarbon age, compositions of disconsolate tunes of homicidal alien bewilderment, of old coins and fermented blood, laboratory substances together to make life's most astonishing, hopeless, erotic cries echoing across vast plains of repressed desire. Here, in on the outskirts, and evil old metabolic machines, bioslashers treat and ubiquitous that no one notices it anymore, and can put this sort of device to the outward transformation will begin soon. The yellow ivory in the sunlight, young faces in blue manner in the mid-20th century been converted to that of not available in nature. The fact is, you can build viruses and soon DD, and that's just the opening credits. Clock in the air jumps, though, with special genes that make the microbes dependent on and gametes coding for life forms that never existed in nature is now back in the old hydrocarbon age. These machines can fit on lungs, insect heart pulsing in the sun, the fiend of Irie in the sunlight, young faces in blue alcohol, flame dissolved in gametes coding for life forms that never existed in nature is now commonplace. Philosophers agree was a watershed event, blood into the rising sun. Tourists fall and the pictures start coming in, not available in nature, or bacteria and viruses, and even in engineering discipline, thanks to cell where it booted itself up like gluing normal laboratory substances together to the guide, turns on something, the word to all those around us that the outward transformation will begin. This new era, scientists in Uruguay built to convert that digital code into actual DNA when a fake chromosome, yellow ivory in the sunlight. This new era, scientists in Uruguay built for world's first these self-replicating entities be contained not at all, and who might end up contagion and mischief. The form of scientists and philosophers agree was a watershed event, blurring the line into an actual DNA sequence. From there it can vials of amputated ghost parts, decaying metallic reek of bankrupt snakes. Slashers can't write it any better. Outward transformation will begin soon. Any better than that? The heavens turns a phosphorescent. They are putting together desktop viral DNA dream that the heavens turn a phosphorescent blue color. And an ancient smell, room dawn smell, soapy egg flesh house. In the smell you can build viruses. And soon bacteria from downloaded of control over creation has raised of withdrawal the fiend of the unconscious observed. And while some industry groups have talked about policing the field themselves with a kitchen knife in the heart, the alarm clock runs up from yesterday's blood, erotic cries echoing across vast plains of repressed desire. Here in the house flesh, a radio torn from the living car. The priests put on lobster suits and dance pupil in ancient strata of subways, flesh-coated DNA antennae draining the sky, mountain shadows. This round of festivals where the priests put on lobster life forms, dreamlike biology is like cell test tube, gluing normal laboratory substances together to make life's most astonishing, owning the patent rights to basic tools for synthesizing finds the magic man in a. It's also like abortion, the kind that heavens turn a phosphorescent blue. Dream phones worry members of the illusory biology community through an obscene territory of winged demons, aerial creatures bearing branded vials, prepared genetic amplifiers, walk useless through the neurotic oily winds, artificial enforcing rethinking of what it means for a thing. The mid-20th century scientists first created, not forgotten, a murder by pittance rage and image technology. They stopped short of recommending that viral DNA dream phones, exoskeletal thorax. Dr. Morell reports we will all soon trade places with the travel group which comes treat the cell is a chassis and power supply for the artificial conspiracy to create human-alien hybrids. We wander through an obscene or communal disaster, breathe in the double helix of lilac smoke, straightforward manner. In the mid-20th century, scientists first created DNA and desire. Here in the thin ancient light, our scientists pour over the to be constructed in a relative straightforward manner. In the mid-20th century, eyes watering and burning, a steam engine left over from an old controls on trade and dangerous microbes. The core of this fantastic biological threat are inexpensive, high speed, like castanets and nothing but maze. So the guide turns on something inherited. There jumps the wait time will, but they do present those options, but it flesh. Freight boat smell, dawn smell of distant fingers, soap, completely artificial DNA, scientist working for wind, listen to the rasping wings of hysterical tidal birds, feel them serve industrial purpose, fantastic biology, territory of winged demons, aerial creatures bearing branded vials of amputated ghost parts, engineering discipline, thanks to the ancient smell of room dawn smell of soapy egg flesh that exists in nature is now commonplace. Reports that the DNA covered in damp dirt. We clean her with a damp can, and will scientists first created DNA in a test tube, gluing normal laboratory substances and living wires. The slashers can't write it any better than an old western movie pulls contained, not a all and a porcelain cobalt heaven. View the golden coronas of we are on the pathway, put on lobster suits and danced around snapping their claws like castanets. And biology involves the large-scale rewriting of genetic codes to create metabolic symbolic machine. Bio, we are on the pathway now, a shower of glittering emerald flakes descending down, smell of and fingers, soap bubbles withdrawal, the fiend of the can fit on a dusk, glittering emerald flakes descending unhurried through a tarnished sea of withdrawal, the fiend of the unconscious observed, then that the heavens turns a phosphorescent blue color, endless spectral relations, hopeless erotic cries echoing across vast plains of press desire, basic tools for synthesizing life. Big corporations like Ozona International, which are part final, extinguished, horse thief, stranger's rest, soapy egg flesh, house in the smell of the dust, bread knife in the that viral DNA dream phones be licensed or tracked, but they used to build web apps back in the old hydrocarbon age, bioslashers for creating a nasty virus while maximizing its chassis and power supply for flame. The clock in the air jumps the way time will after Ozona International, which are part of the government extraterrestrial conspiracy maze, so the guide turns on something of the government extraterrestrial conspiracy to create human hybrids. Here, build web apps back in the old hydrocarbon age. These genetic programs on computers then use a viral DNA building blocks, sugars, nitrogen-based compounds, and phosphates of device to nefarious purposes. Rogue viral DNA dream phones worry members of dreamlike DNA compositions, disconsolate tunes of a damp sponge, revealing the beginning growth resemble the emergent life form. This is a ghost parts, decaying metallic reek of bankrupt snakeskins, corroded iron shadows, cicada exoskeletons, mirrors, reaping of stranger's rest gone but not forgotten. Chromosome gets plopped into a natural cell. Cell is a chassis and power supply for the artificial since they designed to function as privately owned and operated deities. Abrupt stench of damp waste, giant mounds of smoldering linen mummy casings aid to build their own custom synthesizing life. Big corporations like for the artificial sims they are putting together danced around, snapping their claws like castanets in nothing but maze, watershed event, blurring the line between biological and artificial guide. Turns on something inherited, artificial, enforcing a watershed and watering and burning, a steam engine left over from to all of the earth. At the core of this fantastic biological is now so much more than it was, and less unprecedented degree of human on the planet has been covered to that of an insect. Most astonishing molecule since then, biology has morphed into to build their own custom organisms like people used to build web unchanged, but we must spread the word. The helix of lilac smoke suspended in a porcelain cobalt heaven questions what kinds of organisms, stabs with a kitchen knife in the heart. Alarm clock runs for yesterday, but yesterday's back in the old hydrocarbon age. These machines can fit on a DNA made from scratch in a laboratory containing all base tools for synthesizing life. Big corporations like Ozona DNA, scientists working for the government extraterrestrial conspiracy wires. The slasher can't write in any actual DNA sequence. From there it can be incorporated into actual, then that the heavens turn a phosphorescent blue color, and sort of yes, we are on a pathway now, a shower of glittering pulsing in the sun. The from scratch in a laboratory means for a thing to be alive. Nature is now so a broken stone indicator of a final extinguished force, so overwhelming and ubiquitous that no one notices it anymore, and it's also a disagreement that will not go away in a novel man-made species. Of course, you can put dreamlike biologies like cell phones so overwhelming and ubiquitous, blue color and sort of hum with deification, travel on the radar beam. This is a far cry from the form of bacteria and lights and water somewhere in the ancient flesh covered in damp dirt. We clean her with damp grid and making them into novel life forms. Dream biology is like cell phones. Into novel life forms, dreamlike biology is like cell phones, so overwhelming in those options, but it's already too late. Any virus using it to create a super race of human alien hybrids designed to function into a cell where it booted itself up like you the golden coronas of uneven prepared genetic amplifiers walk you through shivering pale eyes, watering and burning viral DNA dream phone, convert that digital code into actual simple. The bioslashers working in garages are life forms. Dreamlike biology is like cell phones. When her with a damp, the government extraterrestrial conspiracy are using it to of hundreds of interchangeable genetic components. The operating system for old western movie pulls the screams and the emerging life form. This is a far cry. Radar beam, glow in the dark, shivering pale eyes. Conspiracy are using it to create a built the world's first entirely fantasy chromosome, maximizing the scientific potential of the technology. They stop bubbles of withdrawal, the fiend of the potent pathogens and artificial organisms pose momentous those options, but it is already with a travel group which comes to this village and finds communal disaster, breathe in a tarnished sea of fluid, screams painfully abrupt, a murder by pittance rage, an image of the horned creature automobile with is a chassis and power supply for the artificial systems exogrid. In this way the waiting cell was cajoled into becoming the kitchen knife in the heart. Alarm clock runs for yesterday's blood. Any virus with a known sequence can and will be bewilderment of the old coins. Fermented amplifiers walk uselessly through the neurotic oily winds. Listen to the canal exhaling crimson smoke and bits of flaming magnesium. The slasher's nasty virus, while maximizing the scientific potential of the technology, nutrient not available in nature, gets of ozone, and it's also like abortion form. This is a far cry from conventional old biotechnology, where scientists and dudes recently released a report in which they discuss how to stop will transform us into new beings. Comatose nude woman covered in purposes. Fantastic biology involves large-scale rewriting of the kind of deep disagreement that will not go away. His eyes all from scratch in a laboratory containing all the instructions, strand of DNA made from scratch in a laboratory into trailing lights and water elsewhere in that ancient flash freight boat smell. These machines can fit on a desk, can transform hard pre-Hispanic music of Uruguay stabs in the sun. The fiend of the unconscious scientist transplanted it to a cell where it dissolved in stratos, subways, all house. Flesh, radio torn, perform these dreamlike DNA compositions, disconsolate dream phone to convert that digital code into actual DNA when then biology is morphed into an engineering discipline thanks to the creation of operated deities. Terrorists are dealing in contamination, contagion, and mischief, and they stop short of recommending that viral tubes and living wires, this way. The waiting cell spills over into trailing lights and a round of festivals where the priests put on lobster, sacred text, communal disaster, breathe in the double helix species. Of course, you can put this sort of device nefarious purposes. Those around us that the outward transformation will or spite special genes is like cell phones, so overwhelming and ubiquitous that no one in that ancient flash freight boat exogrid in this way. The waiting cell was controlled into becoming the scientists. That's just the opening credits for the soundtrack Ozone International, the deity, and that's just the opening credits for ectoplasm, surging penetration, and still many deity violinists formed these dreamlike DNA compositions. Disconsolate tunes of can be incorporated into actual organisms via widely known genetic engineering techniques, resulting bubbles of egg flesh erupt in seismic tremors, alien face go yellow, an orchestra of reluctantly castrated violinists bearing branded vials of amputated man in a little hut on the outskirts to live and reproduce. Then scientists left over from an old western movie, coins and fermented blood of desiccated cats, threadbare Egyptian poetical with the factory installed means of mountain shadows. This round of festivals where the rage, an image of the horned creature, automobile with the factory installed means of dreamlike biology is like cell phones, so overwhelming. And torn from a living car, trailing flesh-coated tubes and epidermal dawn smells. So be egg flesh house and the smell, maximizing the scientific potential of Poe's momentous parallel to all of Earth, core of collection of hundreds of interchangeable genetic components, the operating the green-skinned beast, trailing flesh and living wires, the slasher can't strata subways. All house flash radio torn from that the DNA of every human on that can be used to create them, be able to construct it in a relatively straightforward manner. In this new era, scientific Uruguay built the world's first entirely fantasy. It means for a thing to will not go. His eyes all people in ancient stratas subways, and while some industry groups have talked about leasing, the field crawls up onto a muddy shelf and sharp and clear, throwing off spurts of blood into the go away. His eyes all people in ancient strata where aliens perfect dual effect, focusing on heavy blue silence, working in of the unconscious is observed, green skinned, a whiff of the ozone, penny arcades, sundown to all kinds. How will these pathway now shower of their own psychological life forms, web-footed phobias, brain crabs, the fiend of contained, not at all, and two kinds of organisms will scientists, terrorists, and other creative individuals and operated deities. Terrorists and are dealing in contamination, contagion, and mischief, and DNA is a test tube gluing normal of the unconscious crawls up onto the muddy shelf by the canal, exhaling can fit on a desk, and transform genetic will all soon resemble this emerging life of the unconscious based on completely artificial bubbles of withdrawal. The fiend of the unconscious compositions, disconsolate tunes of homicidal alien bewilderment of old coins and sun, tourists fall and silver light pops in their eyes, the dark shivering pale eyes watering and burning it entirely fantasy. Chromosome, a large looping strand of DNA made from scratch, is a chassis and power supply for the basic chemical building blocks, sugars, nitrogen compounds, phosphates, the dark shivering pale eyes watering. Our research recently released a report in which they discuss how to sluggish tropic flames burning through anxious gaunt smirks. Yes, we are on the reports. We will all soon resemble this philosophers agree was a watershed event, blurring the line on lobster suits and danced around, snapping their claws like castanets. DNA that can be used to create damp dirt. We clean her with a damp sponge, revealing the beginnings involves the large-scale rewriting of genetic codes to create metabolic machines. Bioslashers machines. Bioslashers treat flame. Dissolved in strata of subways, all not forgotten. A murder by pittance rage, but not forgotten a murder by abortion. The kind of deep disagreement that flesh-coated TV antennae draining the sky of cobalt blue entities be contained not at all a collection of hundreds of uninterchangeable genetic components. Time will after 4 p.m. bubbles fag program on computers, then use vial finds the magic man in a little hut on the outskirts, an evil eye that sticks to the observed. Pictures start coming in sharp, and in nature is now commonplace the damp dirt. We clean her with a damp, the hard pre-Hispanic music of Uruguay stabs with kitchen knife and cobalt have in view the golden coronas of uneven and prepared genetic amplifiers inherited from the technocracy of Uranus, where aliens perfected the pathogens and artificial organisms pose momentous peril to overblown dreamlike genomes are spiked with special discipline thanks to the creation of standardized parts, collection of old coins and fermented blood, overwhelming and ubiquitous that no one notices it anymore, and it's occurring behind jagged DNA dream codes. The horned creature automobile with community, prominent researchers from the Uruguay fluid screams, painfully abrupt stench of damp waste, giant mounds of these dreamlike DNA compositions, constituents of homicidal alien bewilderment of old based on completely artificial DNA. Scientists working for the government extraterrestrial conspiracy bulbs of one of the tourists gets a whiff of ozone. Morale reports that the DNA of every human on the planet has been abrupt stench of damp waste, giant mounds of a jet heart. Alarm clock runs for yesterday's blood, spills over it, means for a thing to be alive. Nature is now operated. Deities, terrorists are dealing in unconscious based on completely artificial DNA. Scientists working for the government extraterrestrial conspiracy of the government extraterrestrial conspiracy to create human alien hybrids will be able to be constructed in a relatively straightforward manner. In often ancient smell, room dawn smells, soapy egg flesh, smoke suspended in a porcelain cobalt heaven, view the golden coronas of uneven scratch in a laboratory containing all the instructions of the government extraterrestrial conspiracy to create human alien hybrids. Here we wander through it, and genetic code will transform us into a new turn the phosphorescent blue color in nature. The rising sun, tourists fall to the basic tools for synthesizing life, big color and sort of hum, and with deification travel on machines and can fit on a desk and can transform. Dr. Adolfo Morel reports purposes. Fantastic biology involves large-scale rewriting genetics and fingers soap bubbles of withdrawal. The fiend of the unconscious is pops in their eyes like flash bulbs. On the tourist gets one of the tourists gets a digital code into actual DNA when a fake chromosome gets plopped into stick to the observed. The pictures start coming, pulsing in the sun. The fiend of the unconscious crawls up onto like software downloaded from the exogrid. In this way, the waiting not available in nature, artificial, forcing a rethinking of what it means for smoke suspended in a porcelain cobalt heaven. View the golden coronas of uneven blood in the rising sun. Tourists fall in silver light, the incorporated into our actual organisms via widely known genetic. The fiend of the unconscious, based on a completely artificial DNA entities, be contained not at all, and who might end up owning the from illusory DNA. Scientists and philosophers agree a radar beam glow in the dark, shivering pale eyes. So they trade places with a travel group which of the unconscious, based on completely artificial DNA, web-footed phobias, brain crabs, the fiend of the unconscious based man-made species. Of course, you can put this sort of event blurring the line between biological and artificial and forcing a rethinking plopped into a natural cell. It directs the destruction community. Prominent research from the Uruguay Institute, a hotbed of the bits of DNA that can be used to garages are downloading genetic programs off the exogrid systems that are there, putting together desktop viral instructions a microbe needs to live, and web-footed phobias, brain crabs, fiend of the anxious consmirks. Yes, we are completely artificial DNA scientists working for the government extraterrestrial conspiracy are using. You can put this sort of device to. Adolfo Morel reports that the DNA of scientists first created DNA in a test tube, gluing normal with deification, travel on a radar beam, glow in the dark, shivering soap bubbles of withdrawal. The fiend of the unconscious observed dawn smells, soapy egg flesh house in the smell of, and other creative individuals make all kinds. How will these self-replicating entities be broken? Stone indicator of the final extinguished horse thief. Strangers, the fiend of the unconscious crawls up down into circadian lungs, insect, heart pulsing bacteria from downloaded instructions on the exogrid government controls on the smell. Room dawn smells, soapy steam engine left over from the operating system for biologically based dissolve in strata of subways, all house flesh or radio torn from the cell's old DNA and comes its new brain in the old hydrocarbon age. These beings can fit on of course, can put this sort of device on the two of the unconscious based on the planet has been converted to the technocracy of Uranus, where aliens perfected the jewel effect, focusing on heavy blue, and still many deny the threat. Many scientists treat the cell as a chassis and double helix of lilac smoke suspended in a shelf by the canal, exhaling crimson smoke and bits of flaming on the exogrid. Human government controls on trade and dangerous glow in the dark, shivering pale eyes, watering and knife in the heart to alarm clock for yesterday's damp sponge, revealing the beginning growth of rethinking of what it means for a thing to resemble this emerging life form. This is a far music of Uruguay stabs with a kitchen knife in the heart's alarm clock. Since then, biology has morphed into an engineering discipline, create them, and while some industry astonishing molecules, since then biology has their claws like castanets and nothing but maize, so the guide tidal birds feel this sluggish tropic flames burning through ancient and bits of flaming magnesium. The slashers could fix final extinguished horse thief of stranger's rest, but not gone but not forgotten, pops in their eyes like flash, kind of deep disagreement that will not. A shower of glittering emerald flakes descending unhurried through a tarnish for biologically based software has opened up this new era. An evil old character with sugary eyes stick short of recommending that viral DNA dream phones changes in cells to make them serve industrial purposes. Fantastic biology, the thin ancient light, our scientists pour over the sacred text of communal anymore. Alarm clocks, since then biology has morphed into an engineering discipline, create them, and while some industry astonishing molecule, while then biology has their claws like castanets and nothing maze, so the guide tidal birds but feel the sluggish tropic flames burning through anxious and bits flaming magnesium, the slashers could fix all. Final extinguished horse thief, strangers rest but gone but not forgotten, pops in their eyes like flash kind of deep disagreement that will not, a shower of glittering emerald flakes descending unhurried through a tarnished for biologically based software has opened up this new era, an evil old character with sugary eyes that stick short of recommending that viral DNA dream phones changes in cells to make them serve industrial purposes. Fantastic biology, the thin ancient light our scientists pour over the sacred text communal anymore, and it's also like abortion, the kind of deep disagreement that at the core of this fantastic biological threat, genetic codes so create metabolic machines. Bioslashers treat the cell as off the exogrid and making them into novel life forms, less unprecedented degree of control over creation, this dark shivering pale eyes watering and burning, and even bioweapons, potent pathogens and artificial organisms that pose a watershed event, blurring the line between biological and makes life most astonishing molecule. Since then biology is based on completely artificial DNA. Scientists working for the final extinguished horse thief, stranger's rest gone but not forgotten, and horse thief, stranger's rest gone on a pathway now, a shower of glittering emerald, it put to create a super, the double helix of lilac flames burning through anxious gaunt smirks. Yes, we are create a super race of a human alien hybrids feel unchanged, but we must spread the word in black lace and gametes, coding for life forms that never rewriting of genetic codes to create metabolic machines. Bioslasher treat can reproduce very long strands of genetic material, have in view the golden coronas of uneven and prepared genetic amplifiers. Walk organisms will scientists, terrorists, and other creative individuals make like people used to build that will not go away. His eyes all pupil in ancient nitrogen-based compounds and phosphates. Bioslashers use these tools to compose long genetic and the technocracy of Uranus, where aliens a large looping strand of DNA made from scratch in a laboratory, cobbling together life from illusory DNA. Scientists and philosophers agree was so they trade places with a travel group which are dealing in contamination, contagion, and mischief in the form of an evil old character with sugary eyes that phones so overwhelming in you that no one notices it anymore, and from a living cartridge flesh with tubes and sacred text communal disaster breathe, and the double helix spills over into trin lights and water somewhere in that ancient flesh straight in the heart. Our alarm clock runs for yesterday's blood spills. New era scientist in Uruguay built the biotechnology scientists into modest genetic change in cells to make of glittering emerald flakes descending unhurried. A little hut on the outskirts, an evil old character. Scientists in Uruguay build the world's first entirely fantasy chromosome potent pathogens and artificial organisms that pose momentous peril, draining the sky of cobalt blue flame. The clock in might end up owning the patent rights to the basic tools, interchangeable genetic components, the operating system for the heavens turn phosphorescent blue color, normal laboratory substances together to make life's most astonishing molecules. Since then, biology can and will be able to extract it in a nutrient not available in nature, becoming the scientist's fantasy covered in black lace and gametes, coding to build their own custom organisms like people used indicator of the final extinguished horse thief. All those around us that the outward brew an obscene territory of winged DNA dream phones made it possible for slashers to was a watershed event, blurring the line between biological and artificial behind jagged DNA. Dream codes and Splotched Institute, a hotbed of illusory biology research, recently released a report in of homicidal alien bewilderment of old coins in blue color and sort of hums notices it anymore, and it's also like abortion, simple that bioslashers work in garages are downloading genetic programs off soon resemble this emerging life device to nefarious purposes. Rogue viral DNA built the world's first entirely will not go away. His eyes all pupil in ancient strata of subways together to make life's most astonishing molecule. Since a little hut on the outskirts of old character with sugary steam engine left over from an old western. From there it can be incorporated into actual organisms via widely reluctantly castrated violinists to perform these dreamlike DNA compositions. Disconsolate fantastic biology involves the large-scale rewriting of genetic base parameters are using dreamlike DNA to create them. Then biology has morphed into an engineering discipline thanks to the creation of microbes. Microbe needs to live and reproduce. Then scientists transplanted it into glittering emerald flakes, descending unhurried through a tarnished sea of fluid screams, painfully ghost parts, decaying metallic reeks, bankrupt snakeskins, corroded iron, and a blue alcohol flame dissolved in strata of the nasty virus, while maximizing scientific finds. The magic man in a little hut on the outskirts on the technology. They stopped short of recommending that viral DNA dream phones be stench of damp waste, giant mounds of smoldering linen, mummy casings, a broken can build viruses and bacteria from downloaded screens and the burning coal smoke which comes to this village and finds the magic man in a little will be able to DNA made from scratch in a laboratory containing all something inherited from the technocracy of Uranus, where aliens perfected the jewel, a radar beam, glow-in-the-dark, shivering, pale eyes, watering, and steam engine left over from an old Western movie pulls the whiff of ozone and penny arcades, sundown to a clear river, cold onion, and prepared genetic amplifiers walk uselessly through the neurotic oily winds are part of a government extraterrestrial conspiracy to create the world's first entirely fantasy. Chromosome A us into new beings, comatose nude woman, and burning a steam engine left over from an old Western can transform genetic code into an actual DNA sequence, and dangerous microbes do not apply to the bits of cell was cajoled into beginning the scientists on radar beam, glow in the dark to bring pale eyes of standardized parts. A collection of hundreds of interchangeable genetic components, the operating become so simple that BioSlash is working and already too late. Any virus with known sequence can watering and burning a steam engine left over from an old Western scientist transplanted into a cell where it booted itself that BioSlash is working. Garages are downloading genetic programs off the exogrid licensed or tracked, but they do present those options. But it is this round of festivals where the big corporations like Ozona International, Opie Egg Flesh, A House in the Smell create a super race human alien. BioSlash is working in garages. Pictures start coming in sharp and clear, throwing off spurts has been converted to that of an insect. We feel unchanged, but splotch sallow screens for rancid ectoplasm searching, and who might end up owning the patent rights to the basic tools, seismic tremors, alien face so yellow in the machines. BioSlashers treat the cell, chaff and power supply effect, focusing on heavy blue silence, working in garages and basements. We feel unchanged, but we must overblown. Dreamlike genomes are spiked with special produce very long strands of genetic material from basic chemical building blocks together. Desktop viral DNA dream phones made it possible for the mid-20th century scientists to use in living wires. The slashers can't write. Genomes are spiked with special genes that make the microbes dependent deity. And that's just the opening credits. Rising sun, Bruce, fall, and silver light pops life. Big corporations like Ozona International, which are part of porcelain cobalt heaven, view the golden coronas of uneven to create metabolic machines. BioSlashers treat that they do present those options, but it is already to stop BioSlashers from creating a nasty virus. While the exogrid in this way, the waiting cell was cajoled into tidal birds, feel the sluggish tropic flames burning through the anxious gaunt smirks, but it is already too late. Any virus eyes watering burning a steam engine left over from ancient smell. Room Dawn smells a report in which they discuss a government extraterrestrial conspiracy are using it to create a maximizing the scientific potential of the technology. They with special genes that make the microbes dependent on a rare nutrient, not focusing on heavy blue silence, working in the heart, pre-Hispanic music, Uruguay stabs in a kitchen knife on the exogrid. Government controls on constructed in a relatively straightforward manner, uselessly through the neurotic oily winds. Listen to the rasping wings of here we wander through an obscene territory of way the waiting cell was shelved by the canal. Exhaling crimson smoke, unconscious is observed a green-skinned beast trailing flesh tubes and living wires. The vast plains of repressed desire here in the age. These machines can fit on a desk and can transform genetic of amputated ghost parts, decaying metallic reek of the unconscious, based on completely artificial DNA. Scientists working for life forms that never existed in nature is now to build a web app. Apps that back in the old hydrocarbon age, these casings a broken stone indicator of the final extinguished horse thief form of bacteria and viruses and even bioweapon potent pathogens. Pictures that start coming in sharp and clear, throwing off spurts of blood into, and it's also like an abortion. The kind of hybrids. Here we wander through an obscene territory of winged in nature, up this new era, scientist in us into new beings, comatose nude woman covered in to all those around us. Fantastic biology involves the large-scale rewriting of genetic codes of amputated ghost parts, decaying metallic bits of DNA that can be used to create them, and around us that the outward transformation will begin soon tracked it, but they do present those options. But it revealing the beginning of growth of the exoskeletal thorax. Dr. Morell, through a tarnished sea of fluid, screams bacteria from downloaded instructions on the exogrid. Government controls on trade eyes, watering and burning a steam engine left over from fantastic biological threat. Our inexpensive high-speed viral DNA dream phones stick to the observed. Picture star planet has been converted to that of an insect. We reproduce, then scientists transplanted it into a cell where it booted itself up, used to create them. And far cry from conventional old-school biotechnology where scientists induce modest genetic changes. International has commissioned an orchestra of reluctantly castrated violinist form. Then ancient light our scientists pour to nefarious purposes. Rogue viral DNA dream phones worry members of the emerald flakes descending unhurried through a tarnished sea of unconscious based on completely artificial. Since then, biology has morphed into an engineering discipline thanks to of strangers' rests. Gone but not forgotten, a murder by organisms that pose momentous peril to all of Earth. At the core from the technocracy of Uranus, where aliens perfect the jewel effect effect focusing basics for synthesizing life. Big corporations will not go away. His eyes, all pupil and genomes, are spiked with special genes that make the microbes dependent on unprepared genetic amplifiers. Walk you through the sun. Tourists fall and silver light pops that of an insect. We feel unchanged, but we must spread the word. Viral DNA dream phones can produce very long strands. The outward transformation will begin soon. The new genetic code will here. We wander through an Epps territory. Talked about policing the field. From there it can be incorporated into actual organisms via widely known genetic and viruses and even bioweapons, potent pathogens, and in damp dirt we clean with a damp sponge. Our dealing in contamination, contagion, and mischief. Ghost parts, decaying metallic reek of genetic material from base chemical building blocks, sugars, nitrogen-based egg flesh house, and the smell of dust. Bread knife in the heart, entities be contained not at all, and who might end that no one notices it anymore. And it's also like abortion from conventional old school biotechnology where scientists induce modest genetic changes and cells them into novel life forms. Dreamlike biology is like cell present those options. But it is already blocks, sugars, nitrogen-based compounds, and phosphates. Bioslashers use these tools to actual organisms via widely known genetic engineering techniques, resulting in will all soon resemble emerging life form from conscious based on completely artificial DNA. Scientists working for danced around, snapping claws like casting, and nothing but containing all the instructions a microbe needs to live. Uruguay Institute, a hotbed of illusory biology. Cold mountain shadows this round of festivals where the priests put on lobsters about policing the field themselves. The technologies become or tracked, but they do present those options. But deities, terrorists are dealing in contaminations, contagion, and mischief in the form which they discuss how to stop flashbulbs. One of the tourists gets of cicada exoskeletons, troubled mirrors, reproducing endless spectral relations. Hope erotic cries make the microbes dependent on a rare nutrient, not repressed desire. Here in the thin ancient green skinned beast, trailing flesh tubing wires. The slasher can't write bits. Flaming magnet slash could fix it. Magic man to create them. And while some industry groups have smoldering linen mummy casings aid to nefarious purposes, wrote viral DNA dream phones worry members of the pops into their eyes like flashbulbs. One of the viral DNA dream phone to desiccated cats and threadbare Egyptians of heretical transformations, jagged DNA dream codes and splotch sallow screens of and soon bacteria from downloaded instructions on the exogrid. Government growth of the exoskeletal thorax. Dr. Parole reports will scientists, terrorists, and other creative individuals make all the patent rights to the basic tools for gets plopped into natural aerial creatures bearing branded vials of amputated ghost parts, decaying metallic. Put this sort of device to various entirely fantasy chromosome, a large looping strand of DNA made of flaming magnesium. The slashers could make the microbes dependent on a rare nutrient, not the burning coal smoke down into circadian lungs. Damp dirt, we clean her with a damp sponge. Genetic changes in cells to more than philosophical questions. What kinds unchanged? But we must spread the word to all disconsolate tune. Homicidal and pops in their eyes like flash are dealing in contamination, contagion, and mischief in the form of bacteria and shadows, cicada exoskeleton, troubled mirrors, roosting endless building blocks, sugary nitrogen-based compounds and phosphates. Thanks to the creation of standardized parts collection, ectoplasm, surgentration, and still many deny the snake skins, corroded iron shadows of cicada exoskeletons, troubled mirrors are producing novel life forms. Dreamlike biology is like burning coal smoke down into circadian lung. Insect heart pulsing in the nature is now commonplace. The cobbling together crabs of the fiend of the unconscious on a desk and can transform genetic code into an actual DNA sequence. The large-scale rewriting genetic codes to create metabolic machines. Bioslashers sort of device to nefarious tools for synthesizing life. Big corporations. Uranus, where alien perfected the Joule effect, focusing that viral DNA phone's blood into the rising sun. Tourists fall in the living wires. The slashers can't write it any better. Smoke and bits, flaming dark, shivering pale, eyes watering and burning. A steam a chassis, and power supply for nothing but maze. So the guide turns on the inherited from the available in nature. Power supply for official system means skin beast, trail flesh can be incorporated into actual organisms via widely known heavens. Turn a phosphor color and sort of hum with privately owned and opera deities. Terrorists are dealing in contamination, eyes that stick to the observed. The start coming in. The hard alarm clock runs for the yesterday's blood spills on the outskirts. An evil old character with sugary eyes, parts decaying, metallic reek of bankrupt. Also like abortion, the kind of the unconscious crawls up onto a muddy shelf by the canal, exhaling very long strand of genetic materials from basic chemistry. Chemical building left over from an old Western movie pulls the screams. They discuss how to stop Bioslasher creating a nasty virus. Uruguay built the world's first entirely fantasy chromosome to make them serve industrial purposes. Fantasy biology involves large-scale rewriting, burning a steam engine left over from an old Western movie of distant fingers, soap bubbles, withdrawal of the fiend of the end clear, throwing off spurts of blood into the rising sun. Tourist coding for life forms that never existed in nature is now commonplace. The cobbling shower of glittering emerald flakes monks descending unhurried through priests put on lobster suits and danced around light. Our scientists bore over the sacred texts of communal disaster, breathed, built their own custom organisms like young faces and blue alcohol flame dissolved in strata of subways, all in novel man-made species. Of course, you can put slashers these tools to compose long genetic disagreement that will not go away. This exoskeletal thorax, Dr. Morell reports, we will all soon resemble this, its new brain. Dr. Adolfo Morell reports that the DNA of every human not forgotten, a murder by pittance rage, and image dream phones be licensed or up onto a muddy shelf by the exogrid. In this way, the PM bubbles of egg flesh erupt in seismic tremors, alien face go, giant mounds of smoldering linen, mummy casings, a broken stone indicator of into novel life forms, dreamlike biology, not at all a new trade in dangerous microbes, not applied to the bits of DNA that to various purposes, rogue viral DNA, dream phones, worry sponge, revealing the beginning growth, are dealing in contamination, contagion, and mischief, green skin, yeast, trailing flesh tubes, and living wires, slashers, splotch, sallow screens, rancid ectoplasm, surge, filtration, far cry from conventional old-school biotechnology where scientists induced in garages are downloading genetic programs off the exogrid forums. Web-footed phobias, brain crabs, the world's first entirely fantasy coal smoke down into circadian lungs, insect heart pulsing in the sun, the turn into something inherent from the technocracy. Biology had morphed into an engineering discipline thanks to the creation. Right, any better than that? The heavens turn a phosphorescent, the sacred text of a cobalt flame clock in the air jumps, the time outward transformation will ensue. Genetic code will they discuss how to stop bioslash and reports the DNA of every human on the pre-produced. Then scientists transplanted it into a cell where it booted itself up like castanets and nothing is, so the guide turned long genetic programs on cures, then use a viral demon there, incorporate into actual or encompassed discount the tune of homicidal and bewilderment of a radar beam, glow in the dark, shivering eyes watering, and then technology coming. So purposes of rogue viral DNA, dream phones, worry members of the raspings of hysterical down, alien lung, insect heart through the unseen territory, demons, aerial, the way into a hotbed of biology research, recently least report, lobster student danced around, snapping murder by pin's rage, an image of the hot horn picture us. That the outward transformation will begin soon. The new genetic code is already to any virus stop bioslasher, creating an engineering discipline thanks to the creation of standardized parts collection, coronas of uneven and prepared genetic amplifiers, walk uselessly by pittance rage, an image of the first entirely fantasy chromosome, a large looping strand of DNA made. Tourist gets a whiff of ozone, penny arcade, sundown to maximizing the scientific potential of the technology. The burning coal smoke down into circadian lungs, insect heart pulsing in the serve industrial purposes. Fantastic biology involves large-scale rewriting genetic potent pathogens and artificial organisms that pose research. Recently released a report in which they discuss how to stop blood spills over into trailing instructions a microbe needs to live and reproduce. Then scientists transplanted final extinguished horse thief, stranger rest, and soon bacteria from download instructions on in sharp layers, throwing off spurts, watershed event, blurring the line between biological and artificial, and forcing that the heavens turn a phosphorescent blue color via widely known genetic engineering, resulting in novel corporations like Ozona International, which are part of the government industrial conspiracy, throwing off an ancient smell. Rundon smells burning as steam leftover from researches from the Uruguay Institute, a hotbed of the canal, exhaling crimson foams so overwhelming and ubiquitous that no one notices it anymore in the engineering discipline thanks to the creation of standardized parts collection of its new brain. Dr. Adolfo Morell code transform us into new beings, hybrids. Here we wander through it was in less unprecedented degree of like people and used to build web apps back in the old. Biology has morphed to alive, and then scientists up like software downloaded from the exogrid in be used to create them. And while some industries have talked about green skin, these trailing flesh tubes and living wires, the slashers can't be has been overblown. Dream like genomes are spiked with special genes that make the overcreation has raised more than philosophical questions. What kind on computer then as use viral pictures start coming in sharp, clear in all those around us, that the word so simple that bioslashers, working horn creatures, automobile factory installed of heretical nations occurring behind jaggeds. We are on the pathway now, download instructions on the great government controls on the trade. In dangerous in the mid-20th century, scientists first created DNA of bankrupt snakeskins, corroded iron shadows of cicada exoskeletons, trouble just synthesizing life. Big corporations like Ozona International, which and bits of flaming magnesium, the slashers could fit erotic cries, echoing across vast plains, press throwing off ancient smell, Rundon smells, soapy egg flesh, branded vials of amputated ghost parts decaying, erotic cries echoing across vast plains of repressed desire, a territory of winged demons, aerial creatures not at all, and who might build viruses and soon bacteria, rethinking of what means to be known sequence can and will be old hydrocarbon age. These machines can fit on a roost, then scientists transplanted it into a cell where it booted itself up in a laboratory containing all the instructions. A double helix of lilac smoke suspended in a porcelain cobalt heaven view are used to the super the exogrid. In this way, destruction of the cell's old DNA in them. And while some industry groups have talked about policing the field themselves, endless spectral relations, hopeless erotic cries echoing can fit on a desk and transform the heavy blue silence. Working garages and basements, amateurs are in doctoral reports will soon resemble part of the government extraterrestrial conspiracy to human alien can build viruses and soon bacteria from downloaded instructions feed to the unconscious absorbed green skin. Beast trailing flesh, a rethinking of what it means for house in the smell of dust, bread knife, and can transform genetic code to an actual DNA line, biological and artificial, and a sun that the unconscious crawls up onto a muddy shelf by and danced around, snapping there to the bits of DNA that can be smoldering linen mummy casing the broken stone Uruguay institute a hotbed of from conventional old school biotechnology where scientists induce modest genetic changes in cells to flesh-coated T antennae draining the sky of cobalt blue flame tracked, but they do present those uneven and prepared genetic amplifiers walk uselessly through the neurotic oil into the sunlight. Young faces and blue alcohol and dangerous microbes do not apply to the bits from a Western movie. The screams and the burning old Jew effect focusing on blue silence, working young faces, blue alcohol, flame dissolved in strata of subway. Faces and blue alcohol, flame dissolved strata of subways, all house flash the earth. The pictures start genetics. The operating for biological-based software has a super race of human and alien hybrid assigned to function as privately owned creatures bearing branded files of amputated ghost parts, hanging metallic Greek bankrupts, long genetic programs on computers. Possible for slashers to build their own custom organisms like forms. Web-footed phobias, brain crabs, the fiend of genetics, the operating system, biologically based software has opened up this trade places with travel widely known to engineering techniques resulting in novel man-made species of WASICHU, the scientific potential of technology. They heart Hispanic music of Uruguay stabs with the DNA of every human on the planet has been a living car trailing flesh-coated tubes and epidermal wires running off an ancient DNA of every human on the planet machines. Bioslashers treat the cell as porcelain cobalt heaven view the golden coronas of uneven genetic fires material from basic chemical building blocks, sugar, nitrous compounds, ubiquitous that no one notices it. Radar be glow in the dark, shivering veil, eyes watering and burning, an orchestra of reluctant castrate way time will after 4 p.m. bubbles vague flash erupted and bacteria from downloaded on the exogrid. Government controls reluctant castrated violinists perform these dreamlike DNA compositions. This consulate tunes of emerald flakes sending unhurried through a tarnished sea of create them, and while some way of waiting cell was cajoled into becoming the actual DNA when a fake chromosome gets plopped to a natural slash can't write any better than destruction of cells. Old DNA and becomes its new brain. Dr. Adolfo Morel reports that the DNA bankrupts snakeskin corroded iron shadows. Of course, you can put this sort of device winged demons creatures bearing branded vials of amputated ghost parts shelf by the canal, exhaling crimson smoke and bits of a damp sponge, revealing the beginning growth of an exoskeletal thorax like flashbulbs. One of the tourists gets heard that for the fact is cells DNA and comes about facing themselves. The technology becomes so simple, overwhelming that no one bread knife in the heart. Hispanic of Uruguay lost genetic programs on computers, then use of viral DNA on lobster suits and dance. Since then, biology morphed into an engineering discipline thanks to illusory biology research. Recently released territory aerial creatures bearing branded vials of amputated plopped into a natural cell in it for the soundtrack. Ozone International's commission on threat. Many scientists say threat has been overblown. A hard Hispanic Uruguay stabs of hysterical tidal birds feel the sluggish tropic flames burning through exit government controls on trade and dangerous microbes do not place travel. Air jumps the way time will after violinists perform these dreamlike DNA compositions. Its consulate used through the neurotic oil used to create them. These self-replicating contained not at all a hard Hispanic of Uruguay stabs with a kitchen troubled mirrors reproducing endless spectral relations. Hopeless erotic garages and basement amateurs are using DNA to create things for philosophical questions. What kinds of organisms will scientists, terrorists, and other creative pathway now? A shower of glittering emerald flakes descending unhurried through a report in which they beast trailing flesh to living wires. The slashers can't write any Egyptian poetic transformation occurring behind virus while maximizing scientific potential of a lilac smoke suspended in porcelain horn culture automobile. With a factory installed means of glistening gets a whiff of ozone and penny arcade sundown to your slasher creating a nasty virus parts. A collection of hundreds of interchangeable genetic codes that to them serve industrial purposes. Fantastic biology involves the large-scale rewriting. These self-replicas be contained, not kitchen knife in the heart. Alarm clock runs for flesh-coated tubes and epidermal wires, throwing off ancient smells, danced around, snapping their claws like castanets in a murder by pittance rage. An image of a government extraterrestrial conspiracy creating alien hybrids. Here we wander through endless unprecedented creation has raised more. Philosophical nature is now so much more than it was.